What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Crew 2, and in this video I'm going to take a look at the Lamborghini Huracán Performante. This honestly might be the most sought after car in the Crew 2, like a lot of players really do love this thing, including myself. Last week's summit was definitely pretty intense trying to get this car, so hopefully if you guys did want this thing, I really do hope you guys did get it. One thing that makes the Huracan so sought after, I would say, is the fact that it's one of very few Summit cars that you can actually customize. What's kind of interesting about this is many vehicles in the Crew 2 that normally are in the Summit, you normally can't do much of anything to them, but luckily guys with the Performante, this thing actually has some type of customization to it, and luckily a lot of the customization on this car definitely looks pretty awesome. You can even wide body this thing for one, so I would laugh one day if Ubisoft adds like a wide body version of this thing into like a Summit. I feel like that would be pretty awesome to see, but nonetheless though, moving over to some other customization. So with this guys, you also have different rims you can throw on it. For me personally, with the build I went with the black ones, but my goodness, these tan rims look awesome. So depending on what color you guys want, like I feel like those rims would look really good with like this car being purple or something like that. So at least the car is going to have a lot of customization that can be done to it. I really do like the fact that they did do that, and I also understand why so many people love the Performante as well. Like, this Lamborghini is incredible. Obviously, now we have the new Evo, but this thing is insane. It really does give me hope that someday we might have the SVJ in the Crew 2. My goodness, though, I will happily take the Performante for now. Even in Need for Speed Unbound, I've been driving this car a lot, but it's really hard for me to actually jump into this when that thing does have the SVJ in it. But nonetheless, though, guys, overall, I think you're really going to like this vehicle a lot. Not only because it has customization, but one thing about it as well is this thing has some insane performance to it. Now, one thing I do want to point out, though, I wouldn't say the Lamborghini is going to be like the fastest hypercar in the game, but it's also not going to be the slowest by any stretch either. You can also do some things to the interior as well. Plus, the overall detail of that forged like carbon, I think that's called, looks absolutely insane. I really do love the look of it. They went all out with this vehicle for the most part, guys, but nonetheless though, let's go take an outside look of this thing right now, and then let's take the Performante on a top speed test. So I did end up spawning over to the salt flats once again with the Performante to basically do the top speed test over here. I actually do spawn over to this area quite often when taking a look at cars, but to be honest guys, it's really hard not to come over here. Like, the overall atmosphere in the salt flats is beautiful. Plus, you normally had some really nice lighting over here, even at nighttime with these cars as well. Like, look at this thing. The Performante is absolutely beautiful. You can also see that forged carbon on it as well, which is honestly so cool looking. I'd really love to see that on other cars as well, like in the future. Then again, we also have forged carbon on GTA, but that's just a little bit different. But now let's take a listen to this Performante. And now moving over to the interior view of the Performante, I think we can all agree this is one of the best looking interiors in the entire game, at least when it does come to the overall detail. Like, just take a look at this, guys, the forged carbon. You can also see the detail of the buttons as well, plus you can also see those gauges. I really do like the way the stitching looks in this car as well. Plus on that seat, guys, you can see the Performante there. Like, this thing is honestly beautiful. I really think this might be one of my favorite cars of all time. Like, the overall design and or the detail that they did put into this car in this game is honestly pretty incredible. Then guys, if you were wondering about the dash as well, you will have the shifter indicator, so it will show you the gear that you're in. You also have the RPM reader as well, which is pretty cool. Then you can also see your speed on the bottom right. Unfortunately though, that is going to be in kilometers, and I do not believe there's a way to change that, at least that I know of at the moment. But overall, the detail in this Performante is by far one of the best. But now besides all that, let's see what the top speed of the Lamborghini Huracan Performante actually is. So compared to many hypercars, guys, a lot of the cars obviously do like 295 or so with Nitro Chemist. So I'm wondering what the Lamborghini is going to actually get to. One thing I will be talking about more as well, guys, when I do the race is going to be the fact of this car being nerfed a while ago. It's definitely kind of interesting how some cars are just that good that they do need to be, like, I guess, checked out, so to speak, because they're kind of OP in some way. But overall, I really do feel like many of the hypercars are still going to have a lot of positives to them, even though some might be nerfed in some way like the Lamborghini here. But my goodness, I would still definitely run this car over many of the other ones. But what's kind of funny is many of the races I do in the game, I normally am running the Lamborghini Performante, at least when I'm farming money and all that stuff. But right now, guys, with Nitro Chemist, so it looks like the Lamborghini's going to do 296 miles an hour. So if you guys were wondering why this thing was nerfed a while ago, I believe this car could hit like 315 before, when it was like basically slipstreaming and or hitting Nitro Chemist. So it was probably nerfed by about like 19 miles an hour or so, something around that at least. But nonetheless though, the Huracan Performante is most likely one of the most requested vehicles on the Crew 2. Like, this thing's going to be loved that much, which is probably for good reasoning. I mean, it's going to be a Lamborghini Performante for that matter, but not only that though, it's also going to be a hypercar, which if I had to guess, is probably one of the most used classes in the entire game. And not only that though, the Huracan Performante also has some pretty dang good handling. What's also kind of interesting, guys, I did mention earlier that this car was nerfed a while ago, so I also believe the handling on this car was nerfed a little bit as well, because some of the settings I had before, this car was insanely incredible. Like, this thing could fly around corners at crazy speeds. It might have even been considered one of the best hypercars in the game before, because this thing not only could corner, it was also insanely fast, as I did mention before as well. But I did notice after the update, I did have to redo my pro settings on this vehicle, and it never really handled like it used to. Don't get me wrong, guys, the car's still really good, but my goodness, before the Performante was nerfed, this thing was honestly a monster. I was seeing it basically everywhere on leaderboards and stuff like that as well, so maybe it was a good thing it was nerfed in some way. One of the only flaws I probably think this car might have is probably going to be its higher speed stability, which if I had to guess, I feel like a lot of players are probably not going to mind that too much though, because many of the hypercars on the Crew 2 tend to suffer from this a little bit, especially the Bugattis. My goodness, I'm sure a lot of you guys have noticed going over like a little hill or going around a turn the wrong way, the Bugattis can basically start twisting back and forth with their handling. I noticed the Performante can do this at times as well, but luckily it's pretty controllable, at least sometimes for that matter. But overall though, you really can't go wrong with this vehicle. Like, it does 296, which is going to be pretty dang competitive. It might not be the fastest thing out there compared to like any of the Bugattis or even like the Porsche 918 from the Motor Pass recently as well. The thing does like 312, so a lot of the other cars are definitely going to get up to speed a little bit more. But overall, guys, I would say that's not going to hurt the Performante in any way, especially if you guys want to grind out races for like money and/or parts and stuff like that. That's actually why I use the Performante so much. This is by far one of my favorite vehicles to grind, and I think I have like 3,400 miles on this car, which is by far going to be my most driven car in the Crew 2, because I've done the long hyper race in this thing way too many times, to be honest. But what's kind of funny though is I normally run the Fame Magnet set on this vehicle as well, so with that set you definitely cannot hit 290 miles an hour. I think going on like the straightaways on some of the hills you might be able to hit like 290, if that, maybe 285 or something. So if you guys are not running the Nitro Chemist, do keep that in mind, that the car will be a little bit slower, but that's definitely not going to take away the fun factor of this vehicle, which I would say is going to be one of the funnest cars to drive in the hypercar class. I do want to mention as well, by the way, guys, just in case you might have been wondering, the Performante is definitely going to be a great car for summits. Like, for example, if you guys did win this, you're probably wondering if you can compete in the summits with this vehicle. I would definitely say this thing is by far going to be plenty fast. I do think the only flaw, though, is probably going to be its higher top speed being kind of lower, which, to be honest, on many of the races really isn't going to make that much of a difference. Even with that, you can still probably get a really high score with this car in many of the events anyway. But let me know your guys' thoughts on the Lamborghini Huracán Performante in the comments below. I think we can all agree this is definitely going to be a fan favorite, and here are the settings I'm currently running on this vehicle.